Here's a new pad. The other one, this one's worn a little bit more. But the brake fluid down into my Chipotle cup. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, do that thing down below. All right, this video is on the 2-year maintenance of the brakes, front and rear. I have, I think, 22,500 miles on this bike, and the brakes need to be replaced. And at the 2-year mark, it is a good time to bleed your brake fluid as well. What I'm gonna do is bleed the lowest amount of brake fluid right off of the calipers to try to get anything that maybe has been overheated, get that purged out, and any air that may have been trapped in the caliper itself. So I will go through changing the brake pads and also bleeding the calipers. Now, I went with the centered brake pads for the front and rear as opposed to organic. Centered, it's my understanding, they can handle a little bit more heat. It's better for off-road when you're getting into a lot of dirt and sand and water and in and out of all of those conditions, because the brake pads will wear a little bit longer. They will wear your rotors out a little bit faster than going with organic, but I've decided to go with these. Right now the rotors, they look fine, and that's partly because these are new rotors that I put on, I don't know, around the 12,000, 13,000 mile mark when I put the spoked wheels on. So rotors are good. I just need to change the pads. If this is something that interests you or something you need to do, I will go through how to do the brake bleed in case you have any questions, to make sure that if you're gonna do it, you know what you're getting in for. I have the front wheel taken off, and you can see that the pads really aren't worn all that much, but since I've already changed the back, I'm gonna change these out as well, and because I wanna bleed it, I'll do all that. So I have the axle nut wrench that I'm just gonna sit in here and use that to compress the pads. So I'm just going to give it a twist. And just working back and forth, it got those pistons fully compressed. All right, the next thing we're going to do is I've already taken the cover off of the bleeder, so I just wanted to just loosen it real quick so that I can bleed this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tube on here and then bend it over into something that I can drain the brake fluid in. Now I have a tube put on here so that I can loosen that and drain the brake fluid down into my Chipotle cup. So it should all go through. Now it's best if you keep a little bit of an upward grade on this so that the fluid just doesn't drain down and you get air pocket in there. So I'll try to set that up a little bit higher. Now what I'm going to do is I will loosen this and then squeeze the lever, hold the lever in, and then tighten it. After bleeding the brakes, check the reservoir fluid level and add as necessary. I'm going to add a little bit more fluid to this to fill it up, and put the lid back on, and you're good to go. Alright, there is a clip holding that pin in to make sure it doesn't back off. I'm going to pull that out. Set that aside, and then this is a T27 Torx. That pin goes through. The pin doesn't want to just come straight out, so this is spring loaded. So I'm just going to push down on that spring and pull that pin out. Now the brake pads are going to come out. So you're going to want to see how these come out. Make sure that you get this spring put back in. Alright, so there's the new and old on one side. And here's the other one. This one's worn a little bit more. But they could have gone longer. Since I was changing the back, I'm just going to change the front at the same time. And maybe I don't use the front brakes as much as I think I do for the back to wear out like they did. So, yep, we'll get these put in. And you just need to put the clip back in. There, all done. One final quick note, I did run into a small problem. I bled the brakes without having the engine running, which means the ABS pump wasn't running as well. So what ended up happening is the caliper overpressurized right when I got it done and got everything started and tried to ride, because I didn't bleed it with the ABS going. So in the event that you have that same problem and your caliper seizes up, what I recommend, and this is what I did, is I turned on the bike and ran it, and then I went through that whole bleed process again, so then everything is pressurized and your ABS pump is running. Once I did that, everything seems to be fine. So yeah, if you run into the problem, do that. Bleed it with the engine running. We're going to change the pads on the back brakes and bleed them as well. You can see the piston right here is pushed out quite a ways. These pads are fairly worn. They've got 22,500 miles. So what I'm going to start off by doing is just spreading this back. I want to get this piston pushed all the way back in. Alright, so you can see that's pushed all the way in, and got that done. We got two clips to pull here and here, and that'll let that slide out, and then the pads will come out. All right, before we replace the pads, we are going to bleed the brakes. So the first thing I got to do is get this loosened up, and this is an 11. We'll see how hard this is to break loose. There we go. Okay. And then I've got a tube here that's going to take the fluid and put it in some bottle or something so I can collect the brake fluid. And then once I see clear brake fluid coming out, and I can make sure that I refill the reservoir each time, then I'll close this up and know that we've got good clean brake fluid in here before we replace the pads. In order to get the cap off of the brake reservoir, there is a bolt right here, and it is a 7mm. That is also a size I don't have in my kit, so I'm going to need to get that. So we're going to take this off real quick so we can refill the fluid as we bleed the brakes. Okay, we'll set that out. Carefully turn this. Okay. Take that off. And just set that to the side. And now as we bleed, we can refill. So I'm going to leave the little rubber cap on so fluid doesn't squirt out as we're bleeding. All right, here's my setup. Tube going in. The reason it goes up is so as the fluid gets in here, it doesn't completely drain out, so I don't get any air bubbles coming back in. right, I'm looking at that brake fluid. It is really clear, so I don't think I even needed to do this, and that's what's coming out. So I think I'm gonna call it good. Let's get the pads out. One, two. All right. Okay, that one just fell out. And here are the old pads. Here's a new pad. I don't have any brake cleaner. If I did, I should have bought some. I would have cleaned these up. With this is I'm going to wipe this down. I'm going to put just a small amount of grease over the top of it just to slide it back in and give the brakes the ability to slide a little bit on that. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this useful, especially if you like to do maintenance on your bike yourself, and brakes is something that you want to be able to do, or maybe you need to do on your bike. So check your brakes, make sure the pads look okay, bleed them if you need to. Get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there.
Oh, absolutely.